EnStream was formed by our three largest MNOs, Rogers, Bell, and TELUS. And it was done specifically to be a utility to provide secure element management services. We are absolutely thus a cost recovery utility for the carriers and are open to every other carrier in the country should they want to come on board, obviously on a cost recovery basis, but we're very proud of that fact. This is not a competitive advantage approach at all, which is clearly one of the advantages we have in Canada, and it's clearly one of the lessons that I think other carriers and other jurisdictions could learn from. It has proved very successful for us in Canada. So EnStream has, of course, the engagement of our three shareholders. We have, and this is on all of our business lines, so we do secure element management service for two of our large shareholders. We now do for two of the largest regional carriers, and are in the process with others. On the SPTSM side, we do the work for a number of financial institutions. Because we're the SEM for the carriers, we are connected to the financial institutions, of course, as well. But our third line of business is that we act as the secure element access reseller. And so we provide that full hub capability to all of the participants. And so instead of having bilateral contracts, which always take forever to negotiate, and people have realized that pretty quickly, that it's an awful lot easier if you use a hub like EnStream, even if the SE access piece is just commercial. So that's not a technological piece. We do this, but then we also serve as the SE access reseller. That has full engagement by everybody. We now have contractual relationships with pretty much every, I'm trying to think now, but pretty much every issuer that's involved, certainly all the carriers, and that combination is proving to be very effective. The work we've done on the secure element management side has actually been very, very successful, and as a result, a number of service providers, we call them issuers, in Canada came to us and said, can you do the same? So a number of the large financial institutions built their own in-house SPTSM capability, but increasingly financial institutions are coming to EnStream because the technology works. Our suppliers are very good, the package works and is reliable. So we work in Canada, we have 6 very large financial institutions, most 5 are banks, one's a large credit union, and they have a history of working together. They worked cooperatively many years ago to set up our debit card network, Interact. And so they already have a bit of a history of being able to work together. So whether we are working with issuers, the several that we are providing SPTSM functionality to, or whether we as the secure element manager for the carriers, we are connected to those issuers who either use us, and that's a very convenient connection, or we connect to issuers who have their own built-in in-house SPTSM capability. And so one way or another, either directly or indirectly, we work with 5 of the 6 largest financial institutions. There were a couple of issues. There is always an issue of trust between financial institutions and mobile network operators. I think that's a pretty global standard. And so there was a little bit of uncertainty, and there still is, to be honest, in terms of what is the cost, what should the pricing really be, and nobody really knows because it's so new and the numbers are only just starting. But first and foremost was technology. Because from a financial institution's perspective, especially, Canadian banks are known and in fact respected for being pretty conservative and wanting to do things well. It was incredibly important that they actually have a technology that worked. It helps a great deal, and this is blowing EnStream's own horn for sure, but it helps a great deal when you use the same technology for the secure element management side as you do for the service provider TSM. We also have two outstanding suppliers in Bell ID and in BlackBerry. Bell ID already has had a relationship with a number of our financial institutions on identification software, so they're already trusted. So it was putting all of that together that was the step that needed to be done from a technological perspective. But having a different SPTSM and different technology and a different secure element manager has been overcome. We've done that. It takes a little bit more time, but we've done it and it works. There are always pain points when you have a technical solution that you're trying to do. Pain points, you know, it would be crazy to say that there weren't any. I mean, there are issues of trust, no question. There are issues of, well, is this a competitive thing? And very quickly we were able to explain, both for the carriers and for the financial institutions, this is more of a utility. This is a technology that will do everyone, do well for everybody. That in a country like Canada, where you have a small number of large carriers and a small number of large financial institutions, if a one financial institution said, we're up and running and we're ahead of this and we're going to go and do this with all the carriers, the problem is that financial institution will be upsetting 2/3 of their customers because they're using a different carrier. And very quickly, both the carriers and the financial institutions saw this. So they're a bit of a competitive advantage to being first to market, I guess, in terms of marketing maybe. But very quickly, the realization is everybody on board actually helps everybody. So that was an initial pain point that disappeared fairly quickly in terms of worry about the competitive piece. The retailing environment in Canada has been and will continue to be a bit of a pain point because for various reasons over the last number of years, retail merchants in Canada have lost trust, shall we say, in credit card issuers, financial institutions, just because of increases in interchange fees that weren't expected. And these are legitimate concerns on the part of retailers. People won't embrace mobile payment if they don't have a store that they can actually use their phone to pay at. So you need the retailers to be on board. You need the retailers not just to say we've bought a whole lot of contactless terminals, which at least in Canada we have. You also need them to encourage their staff. You need them to encourage their staff to learn what is involved and to encourage their customers. I mean, it's amazing what a difference that makes. And so we're still in the process of overcoming some of the lack of trust on the part of retailers, but the technology is there with so many contactless terminals. Now we need to build that side of the trust equation a little bit more. So far, it has been investment, although now, because we are on a cost recovery basis, the revenues are working for EnStream. We're a tight ship and proud of that. But the benefit for the carriers is what they anticipate seeing, or the benefit will be further down the road. It's so new. Even in Canada, but still most of the big deployments have happened just only in the last 10, 12 months. And so people don't even know that they can do this. And 2 of the issuers have started to advertise as opposed to the 5 who've actually deployed. So until we start seeing people actually taking this up, then nobody's getting any revenue. Everybody's investing still at this point. But there is a very significant hope now that it's starting to happen. Service providers, so in our case, they're all financial institutions so far, are benefiting the same way that the carriers are. So yes, they are able to say, we have this capability now. As they start advertising, they're going to get customers calling and saying, I want to do this, but I can't because of this and this. And so they're encouraging customers to upgrade to the right device or the right SIM card. There's no question that these companies like being seen to be on the leading edge. In Canada, we're very proud of that. We were very, very early adopters of the internet. We were world leading in debit card penetration, which, by the way, is another example of the financial institutions' ability to cooperate with each other. Most people see this as a longer term proposition, there's no question. There's pretty significant investment up front, but people are doing it because they believe it's the right thing to do, and not just because of feel good, but because they see it as a business opportunity in terms of customer uptake. There are two different questions. One is how many people are actually using NFC payment capability right now in Canada. Well, 2/3 of our populations of cell phone users have Android or BlackBerry. 1/3 still have Apple, and so they're going to have to wait a little bit longer, there's no question. There are always, people who still have older devices. There are people who don't have the NFC capable SIM cards yet, and so that's a matter of time. The key statistic for us now is that because of 5 of the 6 largest financial institutions, all of Canada's large carriers are now offering this capability to their customers. Those banks cover 91% of the Canadian population. Those carriers cover 85% of the Canadian population. So those are really big numbers. The other factor that's important for this particular business is that Canada has a very high penetration of smartphones. So among our cellular subscribers in Canada, a full 3/4 of them have smartphones. And we consume more data than pretty much anybody in the world. And so we're big smartphone users. We like to use our phones, and that bodes really well. So as people ramp up in terms of the devices, SIM cards, and once people start advertising, get the kinks out, make sure everything works, then we're confident it's going to penetrate very quickly. We're actually very excited about the future on a number of levels. In terms of mobile payment versus other mobile transactions, we're actually very excited about the opportunities for governments. The issuance of things like driver's licenses or health cards we see as a really interesting opportunity. Building access. So instead of the fob, being able to use your phone. We see those as very interesting, partly because those are things that would require a level of security that would be akin to what is needed for mobile payments. So we talked a lot, many of us have spoken a lot about HCE and what host card emulation means for the market. EnStream is very clear. We welcome the whole concept because we believe, first, that you do need a secure element solution for the transactions that require high security. We feel very strongly about that. Our banks feel very strongly about that. So all of even the one bank that uses a hybrid tokenization solution still has the applets on the secure element because of the security issue. Where a government is issuing a health card, I think you want to have a pretty high level of security. So we're excited about that from a secure element-based perspective. We obviously have a solution that can accommodate that. We're also very excited because we've established ourselves as a hub. The relationships are also very important. It's not just the technology. And so we see that as an opportunity for EnStream. Certainly as we bring on transport, we bring on hotel, my personal favorite, hotel room keys. Can you imagine not having to actually go to the counter? You could just check in, and an awful lot of applications that we see for mobile, and we certainly see in Canada EnStream playing a role in that because of the relationships as well as the technology. Because the certification, the Visa, MasterCard certification, the global platform, all of that is, these are all global standards. There certainly is an opportunity to go cross-border. We are so busy right now, we're doing what we can and growing what we have in Canada. But there's no question that we see other opportunities. I wouldn't say that the opportunity so much is in cross-border to the United States because the environment's just not there yet. mean, the liability shift isn't happening until late 2015. There are very few contactless terminals in the United States, certainly compared to Canadians. I mean, Canadians still, when they travel to the United States, come back and say, I couldn't even use my chip, my PIN. They don't do chip and PIN. And so it's less of an issue to actually help Canadian customers and cooperate with SoftCard. The challenge in the United States is that the environment is going to take a while to catch up. Where we might be of use is in other markets where we have a track record of being that hub, both on the technological perspective with very good suppliers, but also, you know, a level of trust that we've built up within the financial institution and M&O environments, that if that can be useful, then we're happy to look at that as well. EnStream is pretty focused on making sure that we do what we do well. And because we've become so much busier over the last while, as I've said before, we never were set up to be an SPTSM provider, but lo and behold, we're doing work for financial institutions. All of a sudden we have a customer base and a potential customer base that we hadn't anticipated, you know, 2 years ago. We want to make sure that we do that well. Where the M&Os feel that we can help in terms of coordinating and in deploying, we'll obviously look at that. Right now in Canada we have 2 wallet providers that are almost ready to go and launch in the market. It's challenging because our mobile payments that work so far are the very simple mobile payment apps that the banks have. So when I go to my bank and I hit my mobile payment icon and I pay, it doesn't include, you know, automatic recognition of my reward points or my loyalty programs or anything like that, but it sure works for payment. It's simple and works. The challenge that we've seen, and this is globally, that the whole focus on wallet first, without necessarily having the technology to actually make the payments, has been a bit problematic. We think that, you know, expectations have been raised very high, and then, you know, it stumbled a little bit. In Canada, there have been 2 wallets that have been announced, Yugo and SureTap. Yugo is a joint venture among TD and PC Bank. They did a press release a while ago. SureTap was developed by Rogers, but will be made available by all of the M&Os. Certainly for the SureTap, because those are our shareholders, we're more than happy to be a conduit for it, but we're also more than happy to be a conduit for Yugo and for any other wallet that comes along. We actually believe that, unlike a number of other deployments in other countries, not focusing on the wallet first, and in fact being wallet agnostic, has allowed the actual technology to take hold, and that's proving to work very well in Canada. Our technical people would probably kill me, but we can give a price. And right now we're still very conscious about being cost recovery. We know that if we can get more issuers and more carriers into this business, it will benefit all of us. And so we're very conscious about making this as at least cost pain-free. It's not pain-free, but we can at least do what we can in that regard. So we have our pricing. We can, at this point, the last I heard was that we could probably take on a new issuer and have them up and running in 6 months. We've also actually been able to say now that we've developed our own in-house mobile payment app. So we're not calling it a wallet because that term is so fraught with overuse, frankly. But the same capability as the CIBC mobile payment app we can be replicated, and so we can provide that too. So it's a pretty good thing actually now in Canada to be able to say, we can do this for you, this is what it's going to cost, we can get it done for you in 6 months. There are obviously issues if there's heavy customization, and some issuers just have more of that than others. but to be able to give a time frame and a cost and throw in a mobile payment app, we're very excited about that. Tokenization is one thing, HCE is another in our world. We know there's obviously major overlap. First off, we are very excited, in fact, about HCE. All of our solutions are secure element based, but we see HCE as being, as potentially being, I mean, there's still technological issues to be ironed out and testing it, et cetera. But in the event that HCE actually comes on board and gets deployed for some of the transactions that require less security, so couponing, for example, it depends on the level of security that the transaction needs. So maybe a loyalty program, that can end up being fairly pricey and significant numbers, so maybe that would require a bit more security. We firmly believe that the secure element is needed for the high security payment transactions, no question. But where you have tokenization in a hybrid situation, so one of our banks in Canada, RBC, did launch with a hybrid solution, but it still has applets on the secure element. That was a very conscious decision. HCE, if it can deploy on lower value, lower security transactions and make them more accessible, more readily at lower cost, that will just encourage people to use their mobile devices for more transactions, which is great. From our perspective, we think that's fantastic. And we absolutely feel that there's room for both. That for the high security requirements, we have a secure element-based solution that works, is proven, and we're very pleased with it. And our customers are very pleased with it. HCE can add a tremendous amount. So we're good with that. Very, very keen to actually see what might happen in the market. I have to say, we were pleased that it includes a secure element-based solution. There's clearly a big signal there that security is an issue and that a secure element-based solution is the way to go. So that was a big signal. The challenge for us in Canada is that it's not in Canada yet, and we don't know when it will be. But the fact that they've embraced NFC and embraced a secure element-based solution, I think, is a very strong signal that we're doing the right things, and at some point we hope to be able to work cooperatively in making sure that all Canadian customers have access to this capability. The ability to engage in the discussion. Cooperate is something that comes after you've actually sat down to talk, right? But you need to be able to sit down and say, so what do you think? Is this something that we can work together on? Then the cooperation happens. The big hurdle is that, as we have found, there were concerns. Is this competition? Should we be worried? Are we giving up some kind of a competitive advantage? And then it seemed like the lights went on, both on the issuer side and on the carrier side. No, actually, if we do this and everybody comes on board, it will be good for all of our customers. And then we will compete as we do on other services, other value-added components, whatever we can do to make the service better, more exciting, sexier for our customers, we'll do that. But the underlying technology has to happen first. And if we cooperate in making the technology work in the sense that if we all use a technology that works together, then the ability to deploy is much, much greater. And then we can do all of our competitive stuff. So that was an initial hurdle that we overcame very quickly. And if there's any one message to be able to send to other jurisdictions, because we know that there are continuing concerns, right? There are MNOs in different countries who still have a hard time, cooperating on this kind of a thing. And it's understandable. You have competitive companies that are so used to competing that where there's something where they can actually legally work together on, then they have to get their heads around that. But that's been a really big lesson for us. The it's not a question of standardization so much as standardization in the technology, absolutely. Even if you don't have full standardization, compatibility is really important. And so whenever an MNO or a potential issuer is thinking of getting into the market, talk to others, find out what other people are doing, and if possible, get together to actually combine and work on something that will work for all, because that really allows a much, much quicker deployment of the whole capability. Yes and no. The EnStream model is easy to replicate from a technological perspective because part of the success is that we have a technology that works for the carriers. An increasing number of issuers were using, in effect, the same technology, although they're not the same, but because we use a lot of the same technology and having built them, they talk to each other effectively. So that works very well. That's easily replicatable. It doesn't even have to be our solution. It doesn't have to be with our providers. But the fact that we have a good solution on the SEM side and a good solution on the SPTSM side that works together, anybody could do that. The problem is in the level of cooperation you need to make sure that you do actually have that same solution available to others. And so the technological piece, I would argue, is not as difficult as the commercial piece, which does require the ability to cooperate, the ability to recognize what's competitive and what's not, and focus on the parts that can actually be done in a cooperative way to advance the technology. And then at that point, the ability to then move it forward. There will continue to be worries about cost. There will continue to be worries about, well, should we be paying the carriers X for access to the secure elements? Should we be paying a secure element manager this much? Should we be paying this much for the SPTSM technology? Issuers deciding, should we just do our own in-house solution, or should we do something a third party can do? All of those questions will still be there. And there are different drivers in a variety of different jurisdictions. So easy to do in theory, and certainly on the technological side. I mean, what we do, we can replicate, we can do for any other carrier, and we can do it for any other issuer now. We're really excited about that. The technological piece is the easy part. After that, then it becomes the cooperation and the working together. And that's what we're seeing increasingly too by being asked to be the commercial link. So not just on the technology piece, but because of the level of trust that's been built up, we're now getting more and more carriers and more issuers saying, can we just use you as the reseller so that we don't even need to have a bilateral commercial arrangement? We'll just use you as the hub.